Whether you're new to Camtasia or a grizzled veteran like my guest Jason Valade, here are 5 best practices to level up your productivity in the way you manage your Camtasia projects. Jason Valade is the credentialed ATD master trainer with TechSmith's customer success team. He is privileged to train people on Camtasia, Snagit, and other TechSmith software products. He has a master's degree in educational technology and resides in Michigan. Welcome, Jason.
Thanks for having me, Gord. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm so excited to have you today. Perhaps can you just tell us a little bit about your background in terms of your what you kind of do with clients and how that ties to your experience in education?
Sure. So I've been with TechSmith for about 7 years now, and most of that time has been in a customer-facing role, whether it's training in the educational sector or now for the last 3 or 4 years in the corporate world. It's my responsibility to conduct webinars, to do in-person trainings. So I've been all over the country and a little bit all over the world to be in people's environments so that when they create videos using our software, they're as successful as possible right out of the box. So prior to TechSmith, I was a classroom educator for 6 years. So I've just gone from teaching littler people to bigger people. So
Well, that's great. So as you can see, folks, Jason's well qualified to help us on our topic today. So let's dive in. Our first best practice is prepare your project work environment to suit your workflow. So Jason, this is a very important one to me because I create a lot of videos for YouTube, as you know, and I need to rely on some consistency in the way I do my work and my workflow. So can you share with us some examples of how you might structure a project like from the get-go? So, even before I press the record button, what are some of the best practices approaches for doing that?
Sure. So, as you may know, and as your viewers may know, the projects are typically stored in a file called Camtasia in your Documents folder. If you're a Windows user, if you're a Mac user, they're also in your Documents folder. A lot of what happens in that folder helps dictate whether or not your project's going to be successful moving forward in terms of where files are stored. So the way I always do it before I start anything is I create a folder inside that Camtasia folder and name it after whatever the video is going to be named. So if it's how to train your dog, that's going to be the name of my video and my folder. So once a folder is created and I open up Camtasia and I get ready to start in the editor or wherever I'm going to be, I create that project file, that TSC proj. So I change it from untitled, click save, name it the same name as that folder, and save that project file in that folder. And then as we're going to talk about assets and all those sorts of things, I try and make sure that every asset that I'm going to use that's outside of Camtasia at the original starting point also is in that folder, whether it be images or music or documents. I want them all in one place so it's easy for me to find and easy for me to return to when I need to make edits.
Okay, so that's interesting. I in my practice, because I do my YouTube videos, I have all kinds of elements. I have my research documentation. I may have scripts. I may have a file for what I'm going to read on the teleprompter if I'm doing that. Of a document for YouTube SEO. So it's really about a whole project in general, that I try to bundle all the information together. But then I get into the assets that go inside Camtasia, like my images or graphics that I may use, PowerPoint slides, audio recordings, video clips, MOV overlays, all kinds of things, and MP3 audio clips or special effect files. So I like to break it down into a structure, that kind of supports a design that allows me to have, audio in a folder, then those general documents like I described, like my research scripting, and then I'll have a file for graphics, a folder for graphics and a folder for what I would say produced product. So the finished product. So I have one version or many versions, it goes under produced. And then, like you say, I'll have projects for my Camtasia project files, and then a folder for recordings and another one for video clips. So that's kind of my approach. How does that differ? What is your opinion on you know, is there really like a fixed or set way, or should you be pretty adaptable depending on where you are? Because you've worked with a lot of clients, right?
Yeah, so that's the best part. There is no right way. That's why best practices are just that. They're the practice of whatever works best for you. Your projects tend to have more consistency than mine because they have the same look and feel. So the sheer number of elements that are in your videos far outweigh most videos that I've ever made. So it's great for you to have that audio folder where you may have used the same audio files, and you can literally copy from a source file and paste it and always have that ready in that same file.
Hmm.
For me, the focus on organization is for future proofing the content, where if I ever need to come back to it, or I'm creating a video that's 9 or 10 videos down the road from this one, I can remember I already have that sound effect, or I already have that image. I don't have to reinvent the wheel. I can go and locate it again.
Hmm.
Because you can source all the material you need in your project from that file structure that you've created. That's a great way for you to maintain consistency. So kudos to you on that. I don't use that many elements, but
Hmm.
the ones I do use, I still store in that same folder. Do I create individual folders for media types? No. Is that a great idea? Yeah, I kind of think that is a good idea. It's great to be able to find music beds that are different from sound effects, or scripts that are different from research documents. It's for you to be able to quickly drill down and find that sort of thing instead of going through a list. I think is a great idea.
Okay. So, how does this play out in terms of zipping your project files? Is your strategy tied to some of that around the portability of the project then?
It's a little bit, and we're actually going to get into this later on in our videos. But the
Okay.
idea behind having it all in one place is so that if I need to share it with someone else, or share it with myself on another machine, I have it all self-contained. And that's not to say that all the elements in that folder are going to be used in the video. Um, I can control what is being used by, ingesting that different media either into the media bin or into the library in Camtasia, and then actually zipping it up later, which we'll definitely discuss that as well. But to have a central starting point that's familiar to me and can easily be identified by someone else who might step into the project is crucial.
Yeah, and I think there's many dimensions to this. And what would be great is if people could share in the comments other, deeper details or questions that they may have about, this kind of
Hmm.
approach to dealing with defining your directory and your work structure. Because there are things like, how do you manage your media assets, to share them or to put them locally on the projects, or perhaps, what am I going to do if I'm going to collab with a project, on a project with someone else, or do work on multiple computers. So I may be at the
Hmm.
office and I may come home. So I think, we could obviously deep dive into this, and we're going to, and I'm at an, in another video, but I'm really hoping to see and hear from people, what their experiences and what their curiosities are to learn more.
Absolutely. And the best part about these workflows, Gord, is that they're adaptable, right?
Mhm.
And that's, I'm very interested. I keep hitting the mic. I apologize. I'm very interested to hear what people's thoughts are and feedback are in the comment section, because I had a workflow that I thought was foolproof. Without question, this is the way I'm going to do it. And then a coworker of mine, Ryan, introduced me to the workflow that I just described to you about 3 or 4 years ago. And it just kind of changed my life. It saved me headaches. It gave me a sense of consistency with my videos. So I share that with the masses as often as I get an opportunity.
No, that's excellent. So now let's take a look at our next best practice, and
Mhm.
that is, once media files are in use, don't rename or move the files. So this one is interesting because I've had many people approach me. Oh, I don't understand. I was just using, working on this video last week, and now I can't find these
Mhm.
files. So, Jason, this is an area where people trip up a lot, isn't it?
It is, and if you're new to Camtasia, what you want to understand is there's a couple of parts to an actual Camtasia project. If you're doing any kind of screen recording, The file that gets created within Camtasia is called a .trec, which stands for TechSmith recording file. By default, those are just stored in the Camtasia folder, and they're given a timestamp as its name. It's never named after the project you started, which would be really great. But that file, if you then bring it onto your timeline and start manipulating it, making edits, adding annotations, and all those sorts of things, if you then decide later to take that recording file and move it into your project folder that you created at the very beginning, the one, how to train your dog or whatever it happened to be, that will break your project, only in the sense that Camtasia is still looking for that file in the original location. Now, not all is lost. Some people get really worried about this if it shows up as missing on their timeline. If you know where you placed it, which in our case, hopefully we're putting it with our project file because it makes sense to keep those things together, you can simply right-click and update that media and tell Camtasia where it's moved. Best practice, in my opinion, is to take that TREC as soon as it's done, as soon as you're done recording, is to go in, close Camtasia, move that project or that TREC recording right into that folder so that it's all kept together. It's funny when you say don't rename or move the files, and I've actually showed Gord my screen. I have hundreds upon hundreds of TREC files that are in my Camtasia folder that you couldn't pay me enough to delete right now because I'm not 100% sure what projects they tie to. That being said, the majority of the projects that I do work on, I take to completion right when I start. So returning to them is not as big of a concern. But if you're working on something for a client or someone's paying you a significant fee to get something done, you definitely want to keep track of those files, keep them safeguarded, and definitely visit our next topic we'll talk about in here in a second and make sure that you have them securely backed up.
What about it? Is there any risk in moving the project file around? So can you explain that? I just want people to appreciate the dynamic, not just about the risks associated with renaming the files local, like your media assets, but if you did some changes on the project file naming, and how does that compare in terms of impact?
Yeah, so they're used to what are called file location pointers or reference files. So you're not actually bringing the files necessarily into the Camtasia project file. So something you'll notice is if you start a Camtasia project and you have a TREC recording, that TREC recording, the actual size of the file is massive because this is a raw recording. It's full audio, full video, all those things are put together. But the TREC or the TSC proj file is tiny. Because it's just that shell, that template of a file that's referencing all these other all these other pieces of media. If you move one or rename one, Camtasia is still looking for the original one you started with. So once again, you have to go through the update media, but you may simply forget which one you've renamed it to or where you've moved it to. So it's best to have yourself prepped and ready to go at the beginning to save yourself time, a lot of it's time, and some heartache and headache later down the road. But for someone in a position where they're creating content for YouTube or creating content for a client, time is everything. It's something you can't get back. So you want to make sure that by utilizing this and the other best practices, it's going to give you a better use of your time and give you a better success rate, in my opinion.
Yes, most definitely. And one of the other things we're going to talk about is even the concept of, versioning project files, because sometimes, if you're working with other people or you decide you want to make changes, etc., there's a whole other dimension to versioning, which is something we'll take as a deep dive, as one of those things in one of the subsequent videos. So I just thought I'd share that. So, if people think of any other dynamics around saving, projects and files, please feel free to mention again in the comments so that we cover it in one of the future videos. Okay, so let's jump into our next best practice, and that is archive or back up your projects once you are finished. So, Jason, can you explain how important it is to have another copy or archive your project, and you speak to that a bit in the context of, portability or collaborating? Can you give us a little rundown on that?
Absolutely. So when you create a TechSmith Camtasia project and you bring content or media into your media bin, Those things are associated with that project that you're working on. Whether or not they're on the timeline yet, they're all a part of that project. If I were to want to work on this project, say on another machine, or send it to a collaborator like you, Gord, if I wanted to send you, I know you have Camtasia, so you're able to open up a TechSmith project file. If I just sent you that project file, the TSC proj, um, it would open, but you would have a litany of missing material because all the media, because those are all reference files, is sitting on my computer. That's a
Mhm.
problem for you. So creating a zip of the project, which I do on a pretty regular basis for major projects, something that I want to live on or that has a lasting impact, that the video is going to be around for a while.
Mhm.
I zip that project up, and what zipping does is it takes copies of all those associated files that are in the media bin at that time, and it zips it all together along with the TSE proj file and puts it in a zip file that can then be ingested by anyone else using Camtasia. They wouldn't go to file and open. That's not how it works. There's actually an option that says file, import zipped project, and then Camtasia will unpackage that zip file and put everything where it needs to be. Things will show up on the timeline where they're supposed to be, and all that content will show up in the media bin. We're definitely going to be talking about one of my favorite parts of Camtasia in a little bit here in the library.
Mhm.
But the zipping of a project only will take care of what's on the timeline as it exists and items in the
Mhm.
media bin, not items in the library. That's a separate conversation.
Absolutely. And one of the other great benefits of doing the zip file is because um, you want to have a backup as well of your
Hmm.
project work, because I feel, I've made so many, for in my case, so many YouTube videos that, when you post it into YouTube, it's kind of gone, and it's there. But I want to also have a backup separate from my working area
Hmm.
of the actual project. And I love the fact that the zip file creates this, portable container that has everything, and then you can like sort of store those off in a folder of projects of your videos, and then they're there for archive,
Hmm.
recalling, and reuse, and other purposes. And we're going to dive into some of those dynamics around sharing projects, doing collaborations, working on multiple computers. Again, this is
Hmm.
one of those areas we're going to cover in another video. So again, if anybody has any questions around those kind of dynamics, and if you have any curiosities or things that you're unsure of and you want clarity on, please, again, in the comments below, share with us anything you want us to cover in there. We'd greatly appreciate that.
Absolutely. Can't wait to see what people are wanting to talk about.
Okay, excellent. And now, Jason, our next best practice item is edit projects locally. So can you kind of explain what you mean by locally versus, cloud in context, so people can appreciate that? Because a lot of us use things like Dropbox and G Drive and OneDrive, other sources. Why can't I just like work off something like that and do my projects from there?
So, Gord, the short answer is you can.
Hmm.
The long answer is, but you shouldn't. And here's why. The machine that you're choosing to create videos with is not an underpowered, tiny, inexpensive machine. If you're creating videos professionally, you've invested in a serious machine that has RAM and all the memory and the graphics card and the power to edit and render these videos in a timely fashion. If you're trying to source material from a cloud destination, and having Camtasia constantly reaching out looking for these items, it's going to be a very poor experience, both in time and possible loss of integrity of the images or the music itself or whatever happens to be there. So the best practice is to take whatever project you're working on and put it on your local SSD, or if you have a regular hard drive, that's totally fine as long as it's on the machine. So that's the quickest access point for Camtasia. Now, in terms of storing, I store my projects both on an external terabyte hard drive or multiple terabyte hard drive and in two separate cloud locations, both at the corporate level and OneDrive, mainly because I want a backup. And secondly, for the portability, because I could be anywhere in the world and want to access that project. And I can do that if it's a cloud based. But even if it's in the cloud, Dropbox, Google Drive, whatever it happens to be, I still retrieve that entire project file down from the cloud and make sure it is local to my machine and fully downloaded before I start working on a project. I'll get better results. It's a much faster experience, and I won't lose quality of any of that content that I've already put time into.
Okay, that's some great advice. And again, when we talk about multiple projects and sharing in
Hmm.
another video, we'll take a little deeper dive on how people can handle and pass around the files and work that. So I think that's great that you made that clear for us to see how important it is for that local access. And I think performance is also, like you're saying, a big factor. And I even go to the extent for the operating system on my computer and the software installations, they're all on SSD drive as well. So I can max my performance all around with using the Camtasia app and the project. So even if people have SSD drive space while they're working on the
Hmm.
project, that's a bonus too if they can, have it all running on the fastest
Sure.
media that
Yeah.
they can.
Of course, the caveat, Gord, is if you're in an environment, in a work environment where you've got access to a local network server that's at 10 gigabit speed, uh,
Mm.
one, I'm jealous, but two, that would be equally as viable experience as having it local on your machine. But that's not everyone's reality. The majority of people are probably using a high-end laptop and probably storing the material on a local hard drive versus or on an external hard drive that they then want to pull on to their machine to do one project at a time. That's how I did a lot of my early videos. Everything was stored offsite, and I worked on one video locally at a time. I probably had a couple of versions of it saved locally, but I wanted all the power and all the capabilities of my machine focused on that one video at that one time.
Excellent. So now let's move on to our last best practice that we're going to
Mhm.
feature for today, which is utilize library assets for consistent results and reuse. And I can just, before you dive in here, Jason, I'm just going to share that I use library assets extensively because I have YouTube videos that I produce, and there's a lot of components and elements that I reuse from video to video. So for me, it's such a convenient and time saving feature of Camtasia that I just love it. So can you share a little bit more about your experience and clients' usage of this kind of thing?
Absolutely. So within the Camtasia editor, there's two sections that store media. One is called the media bin, and the media bin is for content that's going to be utilized in the project that you're working on right now. So if you make a screen recording for your project, it's going to be stored in the media bin. If you create an arrow annotation, if you have a call out, a lower third, all those things are stored in the media bin for use today, right now.
Right.
Anything that you want to use past today, you want to store in your library. And that is in cases of like your case, Gord, or anyone that's creating YouTube content, the best practice is, of course, to have those things stored so that they're consistent across videos, whether it be your lower third, whether it be your personal branding. We were speaking earlier, one of the big things about being a YouTuber is you want to gain subscribers, and those
Mhm.
subscribers that intentionally do that want to be notified. So you give them the notification instruction to click the bell icon to make sure that they're getting those notifications, right? You don't want to recreate those every time, and you don't want to go search for them. As long as that you put them in your library, they're available. And with the newest version of Camtasia, you can actually create multiple libraries within your primary library. So, for example, I have a library that's just assets from old versions of Camtasia, ones that I just couldn't let go of because they mean so much to me. I'm a podcaster, so I have a library in Camtasia of just my podcasting assets so that I don't have to look for them. They're always available for me. And I have a version that's for my corporate and internal TechSmith training. All of our icons, the Camtasia icon, the Snagit logos, all those things are available to me because once I found them, I didn't want to have to look for them again. So I created a library that's just those materials. And, you know, add that to the ability to search within the library. You can easily find those, whether it's in one library or another. You can find it based on its name, and they all have thumbnails, so you can quickly see what you're searching for to make sure that you're using the correct asset for that project. And what's great, and not a lot of people know this, is if you ever need to share assets out of your library with someone else, not only can you right click on any asset, and send it away as a libzip or library zip file that other Camtasia users can read, you can actually export entire libraries out of Camtasia so that you can have you and any member of your team or collaborators have the same consistent assets available for multiple videos.
Yeah, I think it's very powerful, and a lot of these enhancements came in the most current release, the 2018 release, and I use it extensively for serving clients. I create separate libraries for each client to have their reusable assets in there. And then, like you said, they're easy enough to export so that when I hand off something, they have something that they can work and tune and
Hmm.
adjust on their end. So it's very powerful and useful. And this is going to be a great topic that we're going to take a deeper dive into because there are a lot of dimensions in here. And I already have a number of videos on my YouTube channel that talk
Hmm.
about library assets, but more in the line of how to modify and create them, but some on the library asset maintenance. But there's been a lot of enhancements in 2018, and we're going to go through some of that in our deeper look. So I'm really looking forward to covering that topic in one of the next videos. So again, if anybody has any questions about library assets and how to use them, we're game to
Hmm.
field those in what we produce. So please put that any information you want in the comments below.
Yeah.
So Jason, I've really enjoyed our chat so far today, and I'm so looking forward to what we're going to do next. And I appreciate that we were able to lay the landscape of what are the things to focus on for best practices, and we're going to do some interesting videos following. And thank you so much. And do you have any parting words or stuff you want to share with everyone to help them prepare for what's to come?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, the pleasure's all on this side of the monitor. So thank you, Gord, for including me in this. I'm really excited about the upcoming videos. And I really want to drive home the point that anyone who's consuming this video now, today, tomorrow, or for the next few days, the goal is to make these videos, these deep dive ones, as relevant to you as possible. So we know our best practices, and even Gord's and mine differ, but get to the same point. We would love to see your feedback, whether you have a suggestion, a question, or a clarification. Make sure you put those in the comment section below, and we'll be sure to address as many, if not all of them, in our upcoming mini series of videos. So thank you so much for having me, Gord. I really appreciate it, and I really look forward to making these videos.
Thank you again, Jason. I look forward as well. And everybody, thanks. And we'll see you in another video soon. Take care.
Bye-bye now.
Bye.